we talked briefly on the phone yesterday. My name is Jessica Luther Rummel. I'm just a local scholar and activist who's been documenting and trying to put a spotlight on what's been happening in Gainesville. And so you're Allison Grinter, sorry. And tell us what organization you're with and how you became involved with what's going on here.
So I do a lot of work with Next Generation Action Network Legal Advocacy Fund, and we are endeavoring to provide representation for protesters, but also civil rights issues, and we're setting up a social justice center to help provide legal representation for more, everyday sort of people.
Right.
But I represent, for instance, Crystal Mason on appeal. She's the African-American woman who was given 5 years in prison for voting in Tarrant County. I represent Reality Winner, who was put in prison for 5 years and 3 months for leaking evidence of Russian interference with voting systems. Anyway, so we have put together a fund for protester defense this summer, and we're reaching out and trying to give as much assistance as we can to any folks who have been arrested for peaceful protests.
And you drove out here today from Dallas to help facilitate bonding out the 3 protesters, the PRO Gainesville organizers, who had warrants issued for their arrest for supposedly obstructing a highway, which is actually a 2-lane road with a max speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And we have video footage to show that those charges are false. But could you just speak to, I was pretty blown away to hear that their bond was set at $2,500 each when the maximum possible fine for the offense they've been accused of committing is $2,000. Can you speak to that?
Well, so bond amounts and fine amounts are not always related.
Sure.
A bond amount is supposed to be set in order to sort of approximate a person's danger to the community and their potential to go on the run and not return to court. Since this is one step up from jaywalking, I would assume that threat to the community and danger and that sort of thing are pretty low. And I don't know that there was any inquiry made about ties to the community or whether they have a passport or are thinking of skipping town.
I mean, they turn themselves in.
Right, and are thinking of skipping town to Argentina to avoid to avoid an obstruction of a passageway. But it's pretty clear that this bond amount was set politically, that it was done to oppress and silence the movement and to send a message to the activist community here in Gainesville, which, although small, is vocal. That the sheriff's department, that the county powers that be, do not want to tolerate dissent, and that's not what we're here about. That's not why anyone should be proud of the United States.
Right. Well, I just want to tell you, thank you for heeding the call. I hope that the fact that you're here now and present and aware of what's going on here, that you will help us continue to put a spotlight on the types of backdoor policing and oppressive tactics that are being used here. If this is what we see happening, we can only imagine, what we don't see. And we've been documenting the kinds of collaborative efforts local authorities have been making with these armed white militias who are making blatant calls for violence. I don't know if you've been sent any of the screenshots. These same counter-protesters who've been coming out with weapons, making threats, are now online literally since the police have done this, since they put out their public call about these warrants. They have been even more emboldened, making blatant calls for calling protesters animals, saying that they should be shot, that it's time to act like Kyle, saying that protesters should be run over, that they should be beaten in the streets. What do you think what kind of responsibility do you think local authorities have for emboldening this type of rhetoric?
Well, I mean, there's emboldening and encouraging, and then there's also ignoring in defiance of their purpose for being here. I mean, when people are making terroristic threats and the police and sheriff's departments are not doing anything about it or overlooking it, and instead choosing to prosecute folks walking on a public street, they've chosen sides, and it's not, they're not earning the right to say Justice Center here. This is a political organization at this point, and that's not right. That's not what we need to keep us safe. Because when the police and the sheriffs will literally refuse to keep us safe and put us in jail just for speaking up, that's not justice, and it's not public safety either.
Right. We've been bringing up, I want to ask you one more thing and I'll let you go. I really appreciate you talking to me. One thing that I've been bringing up is I found the part of the Texas government code that makes it illegal for paramilitary activities for bodies of persons to get together and form militia-style organizations or parade in public with open weapons to intimidate people. And I found how the Southern Poverty Law Center was able to effectively use that Texas code in both state courts and federal courts in order to prevent the Ku Klux Klan in the 1980s from terrorizing people in the same methods that we've seen them, these white militias using in Gainesville. What do you think about that? I mean, is there any legitimate argument there that what these people are doing when they come out in military fatigues, carrying handcuffs but not officers, commiserating and collaborating with local officials, openly carrying weapons, waving them around, using walkie-talkies, conducting themselves in literal parades, marching up and down the street? What do you think? Is there any argument to that if the police wanted to actually use Texas government code to ensure the safety of citizens in his community, could he be exercising, enforcing laws like that to keep people safe in his community?
Well, I absolutely adore the Southern Poverty Law Center, and the ACLU and all of the non-governmental organizations that really seek to keep our rights safe. But it should be the sheriff and the police to enforce the laws. I mean, and that's the problem. When you see armed militias intimidating and threatening people, that's a violation of the law. Walking around a puddle, that is not. And when you choose laws that are when you choose to cage people up over petty violations and deliberately decide to ignore threats to public safety because the safety of the people at issue are not the people that you care about, you cease to be law enforcement.
Okay.